Welcome to the Patron Saints of Pop Culture podcast. I'm Miguel Covarrubias.
And I'm Kathy Covarrubias. And today, let's talk about The Magicians Season 4.
Don't forget to review and subscribe to our podcast on whatever podcast platform you are listening to us right now. Do it right now.
But then come back, because we still got to discuss what we got to discuss.
Yeah, we're going to talk about Magicians Season 4. So, what we're going to be talking about today is Breaking the Wheel.
Secrets are no fun.
And our Saints of Season.
And finally, of course, we'll give you our contact information so you can go ahead and reach out to us if you'd like.
Of course, spoiler alerts for Season 4. If you have not yet seen Season 4 of the show, if you've not seen any spoilers, then, you're lucky.
And there's going to be more spoilers coming up right now.
Although Instagram spoiled it for us.
Yes.
Last year.
Oh my, I'm a little upset because it alluded to something that I was looking forward to in the books that was coming. I was a little upset, but it's okay.
Yeah, you can go and binge watch it now on Netflix. So go and catch Season 4 before you start Season 5, which started on Thursday. So
Yep, or whatever day it is.
Yeah, whenever you listen to our podcast.
Whenever you listen to this.
We're releasing the podcast today on January the 19th of 2020. So.
Yes, just to get that out of the way, all of that confusion. Let's move on.
Yeah. So, we're going into our summary and review. See, I think this one is a lot easier to summarize.
What are you talking about? There's so many side plots and
Well, they're all side plots, but it's more or less, it kind of sticks to a very simple story. They're trying to get more magic back from the library that's being hoarded by the head librarian who wants to turn himself into a god who doesn't succeed, and Quentin dies.
That's one plot. You didn't mention at all about the monsters and Elliot, which is also a big part of that.
Well, it's a big part of it, but it's tied into that.
Oh my goodness. All right, so I'll fill in all the holes.
Okay.
Okay, so we are left off at the end of Season 3, knowing that Elliot is possessed by a monster. The rest of the gang have all been mind wiped and have been given new identities. So they figure out who they really are. Then Then Alice escapes from the library and she's like, guys, I'm better now. And they're like, we don't trust you, which is fair. And then they do what you said.
But she met Santa Claus.
She did. And she released him. He's free now to deliver all of the gifts.
To good kids.
To good kids, yes.
Which apparently Alice is one.
Yes. Oh, and then Margot, she also has a really cool plot line, and she gets her axes, which is completely badass. And I have a lot of respect for a lot of the character growths that a lot of our favorite characters have gone through over the last season.
Well, I didn't think that Season 4 was better than Season 3. I think Season 3 was by far the best season of the show. It's a little hard to top Season 3. But this one did better than Season 2, I think, better than Season 1. I did really enjoy the season, although I think the lack of Elliot being Elliot was a detriment to the show for me.
Yeah. Well, to be fair, he had a monster inside of him.
Yes.
So
well, he did a fantastic job of playing the monster,
Elliot. Yeah.
Not being Elliot. But when he got to shine as Elliot, he's really shown as Elliot.
Yeah.
Especially during the musical numbers, which there were many in this season.
Yes. And they were, I don't know. Yes, it's a little cheesy because it's a sci-fi show. I mean, not as in sci-fi the genre, but sci-fi the network. Mm-hmm. So they tend to do a lot of cheesier things, but I enjoy it. I like a good song sung by the people occasionally. And they're all they're mostly pretty good singers, so.
Well, and Hale Appleman's falsetto is just amazing.
Yeah. Really, really good. And then, oh my gosh, I can't remember her name, but the girl that plays,
Carrie Katie?
Yeah, the girl that plays Katie. Her vocal range is like out of this world.
I know.
She even mentions it in one of the songs. Margot's like, "Why are you here?"
Jade Taylor.
Oh, yes. She's like, "Why are you here?" And she's like, "Vocal range, bitch," or something like that. That's like, fair enough. All right.
Well, and that's one of the things that they excelled at in this season. I think that other seasons they only did a little bit of it. Season 3, you had that moment of One Day More from Les Mis, which, like for me, it was touching. But in this one, I think Quentin's funeral. I mean, just take on me like that, just kind of melancholic version of it.
If you didn't cry during that, if you didn't cry during the last episode of season 4, I don't know do you have a soul?
Well,
I don't know.
Just that whole moment, like it was more powerful with Elliot showing up rather than like Alice or anybody else kind of saying goodbye to Quentin. It was Elliot's.
Well, because they don't really, like what they had was very, like I don't know if anybody. It was
complicated, yeah.
Well, that's not what I was going to say.
Okay.
You're like, I'm going to agree with you, even though it's okay.
Well, it's complicated too.
It is complicated, yes. But they're, like the relationship that they had, I don't know if they've ever really talked about it to anybody else. It's like just something that they have for themselves.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It's like, well, it's just like any other friendship. If you go through something with a friend, but you don't necessarily want to tell your other friends in the group what happened because, you know, it could kind of rock people's worlds.
Yeah.
You know, it might be best to keep it a secret, but it's still very touching that he at least acknowledged that it obviously he still had some feelings towards him.
Yeah.
You know?
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think that they had a better relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's, Elliot was the one person that made Quentin grow, rather as, you know, in the television show as well as in the books. So that's why I appreciated it. So those were my review of it, was that I enjoyed it, just not as much as the last season.
I enjoyed it more than the last season, but it's primarily because I love Margot. Like, she is my lady idol, and I just adore her. And she is a very complex character, and there's a lot to her. She's not just your typical, like, badass, like, boss bitch lady that you normally see in TV. Like, she definitely has layers. Like, it's very clear that she puts on a persona. You know what I mean? Yeah,
I'm chuckling a little bit because we had kind of a similar conversation about Yennefer earlier this week. Yennefer of Vengerberg in The Witcher. So yeah, we'll get to that eventually.
Eventually, yep. But and then I just love her story about how she gets her axes. I mean, they changed it up from the books a little bit, but I like this story better. Lady empowerment and all that jazz.
Yeah, this one, and it didn't have to lead to the whole slaughtering of an entire people group.
Yep, just the guys.
Just the guys. Well, it was the whole Anakin Skywalker back on Tatooine all over again in the books. Yeah, it's pretty bad. So I like what they went through with this. And adding the songs didn't hurt at all. Yeah. All right, is that your review? Yeah. All right. Are you guys ready for a little bit of a history lesson? Because we've got one for you today. You've got one for us today. I've got one for you today. Today we're going to talk a little bit about the history of magic. And the reason why I wanted to bring this up was because of a lot of the plot lines that happened in season 4, I think related to the way that the world has evolved their views of magic. And to be fair, it's called The Magicians. Yeah. Well, and I mean, this is something that the original source material, Lev Grossman's books, I mean, you can tell where his inspiration comes from. Like, he name checks Harry Potter, he name checks Narnia, he name checks Tolkien. Yep. You know, there's so much in the source material that, he grew up with some of the same things that we did. And so a lot of that is built upon other cultures and the way that other cultures evolved their views of magic. Now, one of the funny things is most of the world saw magic as being neither good nor bad. Now, there was a difference between, I would say witchcraft and sorcery, where witchcraft was more an inborn power, was a power from the gods that you were born with, that you stole from the gods before you were born as a human being, in some cultures. In other cultures, it was just, something that, that person was inherently gifted with. Mm-hmm. Sorcery, on the other hand, is using things in nature, using everything around you to source a magic.
Ah, thus the name.
Sorcery.
Got it.
Yep.
Oh my gosh, I feel a little dumb, but it's okay.
No, it's all right. Like, I don't think there's a lot of people who really put two and two together with that. It's like, you don't think about it. Mm-mm. Because a lot of writers of magic stories, they don't go back to the original, like, traditions of things. And that's one of the weird things about the tradition is that since almost the very beginning of stories of magic of these things was that magic was either a way to make sense of things that were unfair to you as a human being. That, it was the gods that used this magic to make things bad for you. Like, because you didn't sow your seeds the right way on your field, or you didn't, water your plants one day. And so the gods were mad at you and made your plants die, or, what have you. Yeah. So that was the way of making sense of it, was that was magic. And so if there was somebody in town that you didn't really like, you accused them of being a magician or a witch, wizard, whatever.
Especially if something went wrong for you.
If something went wrong for you and you knew that person, like, once gave you an evil look.
Oh my gosh. Like the Salem witch trials.
Exactly. Now, see, the funny thing is that was only a very small portion of the world that believed that way. And it was mostly European countries, European, heritage people that was their idea of magic, that magic was inherently bad. That was the way to make sense of things, that if something was unfair to you as a human being, that it was magic. Because,
it's not our own consequences that cause bad things to happen.
Yeah. No, it wasn't your own consequences. It's magic. Most of the rest of the world, did have this idea that, like I said earlier, magic is neither good nor bad. It just is. Mm-hmm. A lot of African countries did have this idea that magic was a way to break the cycle of unfairness. That if you were to get out of those systems or complex situations that, things are being unfair to you, you had to go to a magician. You had to go to a sorcerer, somebody who can make something happen for you to get you out of that situation.
And that actually happens still. You hear stories about people born with albinoism being murdered because people think that they can cure whatever disease they have, using their bones and stuff. So, it's still very much like in the zeitgeist.
Well, and the interesting thing is that Native Americans as well also had this idea, along with the Europeans, that mostly magic was a bad thing, was a way that it was used to be unfair to people, was to continue these cycles. And this is the weird thing about the human psyche, is that we want to make sense of our world. We want things to really fit into these nice little boxes, and we want to make sure that, if something is unfair to us personally, that we've got a way to say, oh, it's that guy over there. Mm-hmm. Blame somebody.
Well, and our brains aren't very reliable with, like, the right information, which is why we, we see faces in, like, trees and, like, inanimate objects and that kind of stuff, because our brains, like you said, is wired to, like, try to make sense of things.
Yeah, we're wired for patterns. Mm-hmm. It's pareidolia. That word that I can't pronounce correctly right now.
That one. You guys can look it up.
Yes.
We'll give you some homework.
It's the reason why that one picture of Mars kind of looks like a face to most people when it's just shadows on a rock.
Yes.
Now for me, there was a lot of that growing up, and because I grew up in very religious culture, very religious community, that I wanted things to make sense, so I would attribute things that were good or bad to either God or the devil because, reasons.
Because of reasons. Well, to be fair, you were kind of told that if bad things happened to you, it was like the devil's work, so.
Well, it was the devil's work and my work because I was inherently bad. No, that's really, that's what we were taught to believe.
I know. It's just so messed up.
I know. Well, and there's the thing was that so many of us have these situations in our lives that, there are cycles that we get into that we can't really feel like we can find a way out, that we feel trapped in these situations. Are there any of these situations that, you particularly feel like trapped in or stuck in yourself that you feel powerless to get yourself out of?
Well, right now, not really. I view time more as like a linear thing. So I feel like whatever bad thing is going on in our life right now is temporary. It might feel hopeless sometimes for sure, but I don't necessarily think it's a cycle of things for me in my life.
Well, and I think this is something that we spent a lot of time talking about this last season. And what's funny is that I think that magic is going to be really a big concept to season 4 of our show here.
A lot of our stuff that we
has
want to
magic
talk to,
in it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I think this is something that, because magic always has a price, that in essence that we're looking for a way to better our lives. And whenever we do, we don't consider the price. And so we end up getting stuck in those cycles. And for me, it's like, we want to find a way out of our debt situation right now, right? So that's one of those things that feels heavy on me is economic and money pressures, is that I feel stuck in that. And that when I feel frustrated or when I hit a wall, my basic coping mechanism before was to be a little self-destructive. And when I was self-destructive, it wasn't good for anybody. And so that was a cycle that I was putting myself in. And then when I was self-destructive, then I would feel like the world is unfair to me again. And then I would want to get more self-destructive. See, it's a cycle.
Yeah.
It's a spiral, maybe. Yeah. Spiral's probably a better word.
Yeah, because it goes like faster and faster. And then it's like, yeah.
So, how this all relates to Fillory and Further. Like what I did there?
Yeah, I get it.
Fictional book
you are
there.
A very clever
in the
man.
book.
I'm glad that I married you.
Thank you. Is that each of the characters had their own cycles that they were trying to break. Like, for instance, the Hedge Witches, they had a lack of magic, and they very, very unveiled allegory there of money. Mm-hmm. It was a very economic kind of, because they were coins. They were using coins.
Well, and essentially, too, like, the top people, the people who had the best connections, were the people who had more access to magic, which is very much like money. You know what I mean? Like, you can't borrow money unless you have some kind of good credit, but you can't have good credit unless... it's,
You get the magical Bernie Sanders in there.
Yes.
The top 1% of magicians have all the magic.
Who would be the Bernie Sanders of the magic world?
I don't know. Dean Fogg? Is his first name Dean? We're going to be Dean Fogg?
Dean Fogg, yes.
Elliot, obviously trying to break that cycle of the monster possessing him. And of him just not relating to himself, not letting himself just be himself. Mm-hmm. And you saw that when he, like, that moment with Quentin, that he knew that he messed up. That he should have just, it's like they had that proof of concept. Which, honestly, I shipped them more than I shipped him with Alice, even though Alice in the books was a much better ship for Quentin. But in the show, it's Elliot.
I think Elliot... No, I lied. I think Quentin deserves... No one. I think
He does deserve no one.
He's not a very good person to be in a relationship with.
Yeah, that's true.
Yes. That's hot take. coming to you from me.
Well, and the magicians, and this is actually one of those interesting things, is that the magicians, how they got their magic to begin with was to steal it from the gods. And this is something that is very common in the tradition of magic as magic stories are told throughout the entirety of the world, is a lot of people steal that from deities in whatever culture that they come from. And so the magicians, this was some cycle that they wanted to break, was that it was unfair for the gods to have all the power, whereas us human beings had none. So we'll take it.
Yeah.
As the librarians did, creating the monster and his sister.
Yep. And don't even mention the fairies, because that was a big thing too.
Yeah. The fairies and their systems, that was not good. So did you feel like any of you, did you see any of the characters in the show going through the cycle and breaking the cycle over the course of the season?
I would say Josh would be a good example of that.
Okay.
Because he was, the doofy Josh, the guy that they would like, almost like, kind of like the Neville Longbottom of the group.
Yeah.
Almost. Like he's a part of the group, but not always. And it's usually only if like they need extra help is when like he comes in. But this time, like Josh kind of matured a little bit, and, proclaimed that, no, I have value in this group. Like I'm not just some like guy that you guys allow me to like hang out with you guys. Like I have value.
Not just cooking.
Not just cooking. Yes.
Well, and I can go on and on and on for this. By the way, if you ever get bored and want a rabbit hole to go down, I would really recommend the magic rabbit hole and witchcraft and where, these stories came from. I did a lot of my work and research on Wikipedia and going to different sources. One of the most interesting things I didn't even include in this, maybe I'll bring up in another one of our podcasts, because we've got a lot of magic coming up.
We do have a lot of magic coming up.
All right.
All right, so moving on to secrets. Secrets are no fun. All right, so I know this is pretty obvious to most people who watched the season, but I feel like this is a good point to really bring up because it can do a lot of damage to people. So when we first come in to the season, as I said before, the gang's memories have been wiped and they have all been given new identities. And so they have no idea what happened to them in the past, which, as we know, as people who are watching the show, leaves them in a very terrible spot because the monster is after them and they basically are like sitting ducks, just like waiting for him to come get him. You know what I mean?
Well, and the whole showing up with Quentin at the end of the season, like the capper for season 3. And then when you first see them, they've spent a lot of time together. And obviously Quentin is kind of or Brian, whoever his
second identity is.
Mind wiped version is.
Yeah.
But like you didn't see that. I think that was more important for us to see. That's one of the reasons why I didn't like season 4 as much as the other seasons.
Oh, you wanted to see the trauma?
I wanted to see how they got there. Like you were left at this cliffhanging moment and then it was like, they just blah, blah, blah'd over it.
That's true. I do agree with that. But the point being is, you don't just like take somebody's power away, erase their memory, and say, good luck when there's a monster after them.
Yeah.
You've put them in a very vulnerable spot. And I know that, Dean Fogg thought that he had his best intentions at heart, which is probably the reason why most people are kept in the dark is about like things in general, is because there's somebody in their life that thinks that it is for their own good.
Yeah.
And I've been in a position where I was kept out of the loop. I was kept in the dark over a situation, and I ended up losing a lot of trust in people, because I didn't know what what was going on. And so that's one of the consequences that people don't necessarily think of, because eventually they're going to find out somehow, or they're going to get suspicious. And then also, too, when you do that, you end up making a life decision sometimes, depending on how detrimental the decision is. I mean, for the for the for the characters here, I mean, this was like a major life decision. Mm-hmm. They had whole new careers, identities. And then for some, when they got their memories back and actually realized what was really going on, it kind of gave them like this whole identity crisis, especially with Katie. She was, she was a badass detective. She was good at her job. It almost seemed like she missed being a detective again,
Yeah, you could tell that she felt like she lost a lot of purpose with Penny mm-hmm. being dead. And so.
Yeah, and her being a detective, like, gave her purpose. She was putting bad guys behind bars, Mm-hmm. And so I can understand, like, what she went through, the whole, I'm not this badass person. Like, I don't do all these great things. But that's okay, because then she ends up becoming the leader of the Hedge Witches, apparently. So,
yeah,
now she's given some purpose. But you can't always assume that something good like that is going to happen when you keep secrets from somebody. That's my point.
Yes.
And then also, too, let's not forget about the monsters. Mm-hmm. The monster within Elliot, he knew he was, like, missing something, which I feel like a lot of us can kind of relate to. Has there been a time when you have been walking around and you're just like, man, like, something just seems off? Like, I feel like I'm missing a piece of some information.
Well, I have generalized anxiety disorder, so yes, all of the time.
Okay. Has that happened when it actually was true?
Oh, well, when it was actually true, well, the problem with where I'm at is that what I imagine to be true and it actually being true, a lot of the times ended up, was part of my psychosis. Mm-hmm. Was that, yes, people were talking behind my back because I worked for a church and that's where people gossip the most, apparently. So, so it's hard to say, like, missing something where it was not actually true,
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of the times I do feel like people don't like me. And I think the truth of the matter is that people don't think about me at all. So.
Yep. Or they just don't know you enough to, like, have made a decision.
Yeah.
I would argue that most people that you come in contact with are just indifferent.
Yeah.
Which is not a bad thing. No. I'd rather people be indifferent of me than hate me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because
at least if there's a chance that there's something good could come out of it. That's what I'm trying to say. Well, with the monsters, he's going through life stealing Elliot's life, I guess.
Yeah.
Trying to figure out exactly, like, what happened. Like, he thinks he's on the right path, but he's still not 100%. And then he gets this new information. And then, like, he gets angry, which, of course, like, when you are presented with, like, the truth of the situation, of course you're gonna, be upset. If you're not upset with the new information, you might be upset that it was hidden from you.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that's the thing, is that there's so much that people keep from you, in other words, to try to protect you. Mm-hmm. And I think that's where let me make my own decision about that information.
Yeah.
If it's going to hurt me, let it hurt me.
Yeah.
I can take care of myself. If it's information that you have for me that, is, like, somebody else is hurting you at that time, give that information to me. Let me, confront that situation. Be with me at that time when I'm going through a rough time, and show me that you're a friend rather than, that person that, you imagine to be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I also kind of have feelings about the monsters in terms of, like, what happened to them.
Yeah.
Yes, they weren't the greatest. they kind of, liked to kill people and were just generally terrible. But I also have to argue that the magicians that, basically destroyed her and stole her powers were also cruel.
Yeah.
As well. And so, I don't know, I just kind of go through mental gymnastics in terms of something cruel happened to somebody who was cruel and was it deserved? And you know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah. Two wrongs don't make a right.
Yeah. I mean, if the person is cruel, is it okay to be cruel to them?
Yeah. And I think that's, we can go on a whole different tangent of the justice system. Mm-hmm. Is it okay to be cruel to somebody who was cruel? Does that make it better?
Well, and who knows exactly how cruel these beings were really before this happened to them.
Yeah.
Maybe there was an inciting incident to where they were just fine and happy, but then they realized that these magicians were trying to, hurt them. And then they kind of, went all protection.
Well, and as Hale Appleman was really portraying the monster was, as a toddler with a bit of a temper. Mm-hmm. And that's what I think, in essence, the binder kind of told everybody was that they're just children that we, God children that we kind of use for our own gain. Mm-hmm. And we couldn't control them.
Yeah. Gosh. And kids too, on that note, when kids encounter something that they don't understand, it's very easy for them to get upset about what's going on because they don't have the mental capacity or the knowledge to know what to do. And it can be frustrating.
As a parent of a young child. So.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah.
I know. I'm thinking of all those things. Gosh, he's cried over the silliest things.
Well, today he just broke into this meltdown over nothing. So it was literally nothing.
We could not figure out what it was. And then when we asked him what it was, he pulls his arms up and goes, I don't know.
And it's well, I'm glad that you can express your feelings. It's okay. You're safe. You can cry if you want to. It's all right.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Talking about expressing feelings, I feel like we got to take a moment for Quentin.
In honor of Quentin Coldwater, we'll just take a moment right now.
Oh, I was going to talk about him. We don't have to have a moment of silence.
Oh, okay. Well, I have a very complicated relationship with Quentin. I think I mentioned back in season 2 when I was actually reading the books that I really did not like him. He is not somebody that I would get along with at all. But it was mostly because there was so much of myself in him. The parts of myself that I didn't like at the time was that instead of actually talking to people about what was going on in my life, I just held it inside and let it stew and boil over. Like Harry Potter in that one book.
The 5th book.
Yes.
Angsty Harry.
Angsty Harry.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's, what we are all as human beings. And I think that Quentin portrayed that very well was, and in the show, I think very much to this point was that he didn't talk to Alice enough. He didn't talk to anybody enough. He just kind of did his own thing and was like, you guys have to follow along with me because I'm Quentin.
Mm-hmm. I'm the leader.
Yeah. Well, I think this is extremely brave for the show is killing him off. Either if it was Jason Ralph saying, you know what, I don't want to do this anymore.
I got to get a haircut.
Or it was, the writers who were like, yeah.
Quentin's story's done.
Mm-hmm. It was good. And it was led for a very powerful and meaningful moment. I don't think bringing him back would be a good thing.
No, they've... I was reading some articles. It's definite he's not coming back.
No, I know. It's definite he's not coming back. Not even to be in the afterlife kind of thing.
No, because he's moved on.
Yeah. which, is probably great for the actor, but, I loved the show Quentin more than I did the book Quentin.
He was still very infuriating sometimes.
Yes.
Like, what the heck are you doing? But he also did grow enough to where I feel like his story was a good, satisfying sandwich. We got a full character development. He did all of his quests, and his quests were done.
Yeah.
And even, Finn mentioned something about, how she had, no, it wasn't, no, Afterlife Penny. Penny
yeah.
One?
Penny One.
I don't know. Does he have a nickname?
I think it's 42, because that's the times that they went through the timeline to get to the one where they actually defeated the beast.
Well, anyway, that Penny, who is dead, his story arc was basically teaching this other dead person that, stories don't always have to go through like one person's point of view. Just because we want to see it through somebody else's eyes doesn't necessarily mean that that's actually what's happening. Mm-hmm. And we could have an even better story if we go through somebody else's eyes.
Well, I mean, there are entire plays that are written from other characters' perspectives. Mm-hmm. And like sometimes I think they're even better than the original.
Yeah. Yep. So anyway, thank you, Quentin, for giving us those lessons. And if you didn't cry during that funeral scene, like I said, you have no soul, because I definitely was ugly crying. You were ugly crying.
Yes.
There was lots of tears.
We will now honor Saint Quentin of Coldwater. We did have a little thing last with a meditation for Saint Quentin of Coldwater. He is the patron saint of disillusioned millennials, as I put it in there. So,
yes.
Go read that. It's on our website, and we'll talk about that here in a second. But this is a prime opportunity for us to bring up our saint of season. And for me, it's one of those people who took it upon themselves to say, you know what? I'm not a background character. I am the lead character in my own story. And she even was surprised at one moment. Wait, I'm not just a supporting character? Mm-hmm. Was Fen. I think Fen this season really stepped into her own. She's no longer a recurring character. Now she is an actual part of the show. And I think this was good. I think that, she ran the country. She took on, Margot to say, okay, I don't want to have to do this, but I have to do this so that, we can move forward with this. She was taking charge. So yeah. I really think that Fen really pulled off her sainthood for the season.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she's come so far from being her dad was the guy who made weapons, but I can't remember what that kind of occupation is.
Blacksmith?
Blacksmith, yeah. She's come a long way from being just the blacksmith's daughter.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, my turn?
Yes.
Okay, so my saint is not going to be Margot, because I think she's awesome anyway, and she does deserve sainthood, but I thought I'd mix things up. And I'm actually going to go with Josh, which might be a little surprising to some people, but we spent a little bit more time with Josh this season. And I feel like Josh has definitely done a lot of maturing over this last season. And he has come to realize that, he does have a lot to offer the group. He shouldn't be just the Neville Longbottom of the group, that he should be able to step up and actually be a part of the group. And yes, he does get with Margot, which is, I don't know. It's still weird to me. I don't know. I have feelings about it.
Are you one of those people who are he's not up to her level of hotness, so he...
No, I just feel I don't know. I don't think that she is as into him as he is into her. And that can be detrimental sometimes. Yeah.
I think it's an equal part there. I think they're both into each other. They just don't know how much they are into each other. Except for Josh. Josh is a little bit more into
I still feel that Margot's just using him just a little bit.
All right.
Just a little bit. I don't know. We don't know. We haven't watched season 5 yet. So who knows if it's different. That's kind of how I...
Yeah, but Margot and Elliot are like in the future in Fillory, though.
Yes, but then they're not. I don't know. Like looking at the previews, it's very confusing.
Yeah.
It's Fillory.
It's Fillory. So, let us know who your saints of the season of season 4 of The Magicians were, and this is how you can do so.
You can go ahead and reach us at Facebook and Instagram at Patron Saints of Pop Culture. You can also reach us at our website, which is
www.patronsaintsofpopculture.org. You don't have to put in the W's. I just, reminding to people.
I'm pretty sure we are now in 2020 that people know that www goes in front of most websites.
Yeah, if you can't get there, it's maybe because of W's, but sometimes some browsers will not let you go.
It's okay. Let them figure that out.
All right. So with all of that being said, we invite you to come and join the conversation.
Bye.